Hello, it's Noah here, and I have not created a video in a little while about Potion. And I think that's because I just haven't felt like I've made much progress recently on Potion. And in some ways that's kind of true, but really it's because a lot of the progress I've made is not customer facing. It's not something that you can like visually see. A lot of it has been infrastructure kind of stuff. And so it's just, it's hard to market that. It's hard to talk about that when it's like, there's not like a visibly thing that people have seen. And also it's just like working on infrastructure, it's taken a lot of time. And so there will be definitely some good optimizations and just stability that comes from working on the infrastructure. But it's, that's almost just like what people expect. And so it's kind of hard to talk about that. And I was thinking about this a little bit more. The builder JR on Twitter, JR, he builds a couple different products. He's done some blockchain stuff with centralized coin. He's done Flurry app and Graph JSON. So he's an indie hacker, solo indie hacker, working on stuff all on himself, by himself. And he made this tweet that I thought was really interesting that I felt like I could really understand and feel like I've kind of gone through a similar experience. And he said, after building a digital products marketplace, a blockchain, and a full-blown analytics platform, I'm exhausted. If I could start over, I'd probably build something simple like a no-code forms builder, minimal surface area, unlock space for creativity and excellence. So yeah, there was a lot I could feel, like I kind of feel the same with that, where in a lot of ways, like Potion is a pretty complex product. Like it's taking the Notion data, all the content from Notion, and then turning it into a website. It hosts it. There's all the infrastructure there to host hundreds of websites. Like one of the hardest things I've been going through recently is just migrating my infrastructure from one to the other. Not even only just creating the new infrastructure, but that migration process is like really tricky. Probably one of the hardest things is like migrating to different systems, just because you want it to work. You don't want there to be any issues in the process for my customers and stuff like that. And so yeah, it just feels like I've been kind of churning my wheels working on some of this stuff, and I think it kind of comes down to this, is that like this is kind of a big product for a solo person like myself to work on, where one of the biggest things is like whenever Notion changes something, like, which isn't, all that often. I'd say that maybe like every month or two, every 2 months or so, there's a new block, or they update their block that maybe can configure and maybe break or just not necessarily break, but just kind of change how well Potion works with the past formats of their data and stuff. Like they just added new ways to view databases with all their different views for data. And so like updating that so that works. So like there's just a lot of keeping up that I feel like I'm doing, that it just doesn't feel like an overall like I'm moving forward, if you know what I mean. And so I think that's what's kind of challenging about this product. But I guess on the flip side, I think once I get past some of this infrastructure stuff that I've been working on and like that's complete, I'll hopefully be at a point where I can just move a lot quicker, move a lot faster, and be able to work on some of the new features that I've really been wanting to get to, like a dashboard V2 for Potion and making some things better. So I would guess and speculate that I'll feel a lot better about how things are going once I get to that point. But in the meantime, it does feel like it's kind of a slog, and there's just so much to do just for one person. Not to forget about, I've kind of been splitting my time recently too with my NFT project City Clash, which has been a lot of fun, and there's just lots of opportunities that have come about from me kind of starting on that. But you know how projects are, whenever you start on something, it always kind of blows up in scope, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's just like more to do, takes longer than you have thought, and things like that. So that's kind of what's happened with City Clash, which has taken even more of my time than I first thought it would. But it's all good and great. And so yeah, I guess this is just kind of me kind of talking through how I'm feeling about where I'm at with Potion. And I know there's a lot of things kind of that I still have to do to push on. And I think once I get over that edge, I'll hopefully be feeling better about it. But I just wanted to be kind of open and transparent with where things are at and just where my head is really, because I'm sure that others of you out there are maybe in the same spot like JR, where you're feeling kind of exhausted. And I think it is actually just something to think about when you as a solo indie hacker are looking for what kind of product, kind of business should you build, like I think it does make sense to really go for something that can be a small scope where you can really make a great product in that scope, where it's not gonna just blow up to just be a huge thing that is just too much for one person to handle. So I think that's really a key thing to think about when you're looking at the kind of product ideas and businesses that you want to start. I mean, I think a great example of like an indie hacker business was one of my last ones that I sold, Support Man, where basically what it was a notification system that notified support teams in Slack. And so it's a pretty simple app. Like it's listening for things happening and then it's notifying in Slack. Like there's only so much UI and things that you have to build there. I think another example could be like an API where you're not having to build out a ton of UI and user experience kind of stuff. It's more of like the behind the scenes infrastructure API stuff that you're building there. So I think those are maybe some ideas of like some good, looking for some products where it's something that you can make a really excellent product that's a smaller product, but it's, you want to find something that's hopefully quick to make, easy to build, but has a good amount of value to customers where they're willing to pay a good amount for it. Like those are the sweet spots of finding those kind of products. And that's definitely not easy. But yeah, that's just one, I think, kind of thing to kind of learn from this, is that, finding those simple products is maybe a good way to go. But then at the end of the day, everything does kind of grow in scope. And so that's just kind of, I guess, part of it. So anyways, that was some of my thoughts. Maybe that's helpful. If you have any thoughts, reply to me on Twitter or here on the YouTube comments, and I'll see you next time.